This topic of what's the role of public universities, in particular the big public systems, in this thing we're calling going online, I find really, really interesting. And I find it interesting because of two important data points. The first data point has to do with who is learning in higher ed today. And with 80% of them being non-traditional, it suggests there's somebody else we need to serve that's demanding service. And the other is a luminous statistic that they think the future of U.S. competitiveness is based in having 60% of our workforce college educated. And if you put those two together, it's a very compelling message for the big public university systems who serve those audiences. As some of you know, I started my higher ed career at Colorado State University. It's one of the land grants. And when I joined the land grant, I said, "What's that?" I went and read the Morrill Act that was signed by Abraham Lincoln and was in 1860. And it struck me deeply because what the Morrill Act said was higher ed is the exclusive domain of wealthy white men. And as we move into an industrial economy, that's insufficient, and we need to find a way to dramatically expand the public resource for higher education. Then I looked at my own university at Colorado State and I said, it's really interesting. I just read the Morrill Act and we don't serve those students anymore. We've become a $350 million a year Carnegie One research university that's really quite exclusive. And who is going to serve them? And so our solution in Colorado, given that we were a small system, 2 campuses, neither of whom had the resources, we created a third school, Colorado State Global Campus, aimed entirely at part-time adult learners, this 80%, and aimed squarely at the issue that I was facing in Colorado of how do we help the economic development of the state through workforce development, and particularly knowledge workforce development. And so we brought out a new university online very quickly as a startup. We talked to Penn State, we talked to the folks at Illinois, we talked to the folks at Rio Salada in Arizona. We also looked at some failures, and we decided that we could do this better than the private for-profits. We thanked them for teaching the market, for developing the technology and the methodologies, and we took all that and we did it at much lower price and higher quality. And Colorado State Global Campus in 7 years went from 0 to 17,000 students with 7,000 graduates. That's substantive. And Colorado did that as a separate university because it's a small system. It's a different time now. And if you're a big system in particular, your campuses are already working in online. Where do you go with that? Now, let me try to unpack this just a little bit because there's a few points and themes that we learned that matter. First of all, public universities are responsible for fueling the civic, social, and economic success of their states. And so you have to look at what your state needs in terms of workforce. And you have to live with the fact that your state is not going to fund you doing it. Second, sustainable economic growth is probably impossible in your state unless you can get towards the threshold of 35% college educated. And in states like California and Massachusetts, particularly the big cities where you're 35, 40%, you see what's happening with the economy, and we should model after that. Many local campuses in public universities are already doing this, but they're doing it in a fragmented way without standards, driven by faculty often or departments that are interested, which is very expensive for delivery. And finally is a brand point that we observe all over. Education is really a very local thing. And so a public university doing this well will get the best students in their local region. And therefore they have this. So why is it the role of the public university to serve this DCE and extension school piece? And I think it's their role because it's the only way they can address the spirit of the Morrill Act, the spirit of what their governors all want in a spot of scarcity. We all know there will be no state funding to expand your campuses, and yet we're saying double the number of students you educate. Therefore, it will not be done on campus. The beauty of it is, if you can get a little bit of policy change, practice change, and a few new systems, you can serve that new market. That's the 80% adult learners. It's a cash market. And if you serve them really, really well, you will produce surpluses that will allow you to reinvest in the campus. And I believe the future of the campus is hybrid. It's neither online nor classroom. It's optimizing the mix. And once a campus becomes hybrid, you can bring more people in for those magical learning moments that happen face-to-face that we have yet to understand how to replicate or even know if you can replicate online. So one reaction you're likely having is, we just can't do that. This is the reaction I get when I work with presidents and chancellors is, yeah, that's great, but we could never do that. So I want to hold out the example of my school now at the Harvard Extension School. We've been doing that for 107 years, starting with night classes, then online, now highly blended. We are able to deliver an undergraduate education from Harvard for $45,000 and a graduate education for under $30,000. And we make a surplus doing it. And we take that surplus and we put it back in the faculty so that the faculty will keep supporting us. Harvard, my guess, is the highest cost education institution in the world. If we can do this, I really believe anybody can, and all the big public should. And it will pay its own way, pay back some of the lost money from the state. And so I really encourage you to figure out how to do it.